Okay, here we are again. Yes, where's my button? I need the button. There's the button. I still got to do... You'd think I'd be better at this. There we go. We're here. We made it. For June 2022 SeligAudio live stream in the Northwoods House of Sound, where we've gone from summer to spring to summer to spring and back to summer yesterday and spring today. That's been the last month weather report in a nutshell. It's crazy, and still not used to living in the Northeast. It's new to me, but it's amazing being where I get to be, and you'll probably see at some point, look for the big puppy wandering around. Roxy is the newest member of the family. She's behaving herself right now, but I'm in charge of her today, and anything could happen. I could have to go pull a microphone cable out of her mouth, or who knows what. So today we're going to talk about the B3 Mark II Combinator and how generally a good workflow for building Combinator 2s. We're also going to cover something else. So we're going to cover some CV basics, a question that came up on Reason Talk earlier today. And before we do that, though, we're going to do a quick tip that I've been meaning to do for a while. Let's get over here to this mode. This has to do with hearing a lot of people talk about how Reason's naming convention, like I name a track and then it doesn't change in the sequencer, or I name it in the sequencer and it changes where I don't want it to change. And it just seems random, but it's really not. If you remember, there are two key things to look for here. There are track or instrument names, and there are mixer channel names. There is a special link between them that you can override by typing a new name in the mixer channel. But there's a direct link between the track name, which is on the piece of tape, the tape strip, up here in the upper right hand corner on the B3 Combinator here. That is directly linked to, there goes the dog. I knew it was going to happen. Roxy, don't chew up your stuff. Oh my gosh. She got a slipper. Classic. Classic puppy. So hopefully that won't happen too often. You never know. Let's see, where was I? Okay, so you've got the name of the device, which is done on the tape strip, and it follows in the sequencer. So if I rename something in the sequencer, it will also name in the track. And if I rename it in the track, it will also name in the rack. Now, there's also a mixer channel in the rack that also has a name that's the same, but I can change it. So I can just call that B3. It doesn't change the name here, and it doesn't change the name down here. But it does change the name in the mixer view, because this is a mixer. So it's here, B3. All right, so the mixer channel and the, oh boy, it's gonna be fun, I can tell already. The mixer channel B3 and the rack B3 are the same. And then the tape strip and the sequencer are the same. I guess it's better than chewing the slipper. I'm assuming everyone can hear the dog on the dog toy, which I should record. It's a great performance. So the link can be broken by overriding it, and then we can restore the link just by backspacing, and it'll go back to the original name. I wish you could see the look I just got from the puppy. The I'm sorry, I'm not sorry puppy look. Okay, so if you want to name, let's just cut to the chase. If you want to name the track somewhere where it will always follow, do it in the sequencer. Everything, unless you've overwritten the name in the mixer, will follow from here. If you name it in the mixer here, or in the rack here, it will change the name to a custom name. Now, this is important if you're splitting out like a redrum into 8 channels or 10 channels and you want each one to have its own name. And it's also handy if you want to let the instrument name be the preset name, which is what it defaults to, and then in the mixer you might want to give it a simpler name than something like 0 Selig B3 Mark II init, or crazy like that. So that's the naming convention. That I've finally figured that out. A couple months ago I just sat down and said, I'm going to figure this out because it wasn't clear in the manual. So that's the relationship. I hope it's been clear here. I just either named the tape strip or the sequencer now. I've always just named the sequencer. Now I know that I can also name the tape strip. And let's move on to the star of today's show, the Combinator 2 here of the B3. I was playing it earlier. So one thing I've done here, let's turn that down really quick. One thing I've done here is I've made a, normally it looks like this. I configure it to look like 3 spaces. So basically I have all these main controls visible. So we can't really open and close tabs in the Combinator, but you can set it so that you can come into the editor and reveal some hidden types of controls. The top and bottom pulley position are for the treble rotor, the high frequency driver that spins around on the top of the Leslie. There are 2 pulley positions. The top is actually slightly slower and the bottom position is slightly faster from wherever it's set by default. The acceleration just define how fast it takes to get up to speed and how fast it takes to go back down for each of the 2 separately. We also have a waveform control, which can kind of age the waveforms. Oh, I used a different approach for the tone bars. So I used Thor still, but I'm using the wavetable oscillator instead of the FM oscillator for the sine wave. That lets me turn the sine wave to a tiny bit of triangle wave, which right now it's set on, I have to get out of this. It's set on about 5, which is just a little bit of extra harmonics in each tone bar, away from a pure sine wave. And so that's a new feature. Plus you can go all the way to square or sawtooth if you really want to get crazy. The other addition, oh, let me finish this. The drawbar filter and filter slope is just a way to brighten or darken the overall tone of the instrument. And then percussion volume gives you a booster if you really want to push the percussion effect louder. And also this clever button here, which I love, it's the Polyphonic Percussion button. So that just means in a real B3, the percussion, which is the little bit of the sound that happens. Let me just play you an example on the front. I have to turn off all these other drawbars though. Oh, I didn't map it to the keyboard. Silly me, that would have made it a lot easier. So it can be faster decay, slower decay, different pitch, and softer, but we can also make it louder. And we can also, normally, I'm playing a chord now, but it's only playing 1 note. But if I change it to poly, you get something you can't do on a real B3. So that's a handy thing to have. And let's see, so the drawbars work like regular drawbars, whereas at the bottom they're the loudest. It's an 8, if you can see that there. And so I just inverted their function in the mixer here. That's all these white bars because they're upside down. So they're basically just controlling the volume of the main mixer here for the drawbars. And it's more or less calibrated so that these numbers will represent B3 settings that are famously known. For example, this and this is a common setting. And this is probably the first four is what I use 90% of the time as a starting point if I don't know what I want to do on B3 and I just need to put something in there and get me started. All right, so let's see what's new. We have the full vibrato and chorus section modeled now, which we didn't have before. We had a way to switch on the chorus 3, which is kind of clunky. We just didn't have many controls, so I had to compromise a whole lot. Don't have to do it so much now. In fact, I don't really have a shortage of anything, so I'm happy with having all of this. I have the acceleration controls were on the original hidden inside, and the balance was on the original hidden inside, but now it's out here. We have drive, tone, and presence because I'm using Scream for the overdrive, and then I give you an optional overdrive and distortion type. And then we have the width control, which is a continuous variable for the top. Well, it actually affects the top and the bottom rotor. And then wider puts the stereo imager on it and makes the effect even wider, unnaturally so. Modulation wheel does the Leslie, fast and slow. Switches a little bit below the halfway point, so it's easy to make sure that you always get it without having to go all the way up. And there's that sound again. Oh my gosh. Why did we ever buy that toy? And let's see, what else? We have reverb, decay, and level. And then the master level. And then there's one more drawbar. If anybody out there is a B3 nut, they know what foldback is. Foldback is the bottom drawbar pitches and the top pitches don't have enough pitches to cover the whole range, so they double up. So I'll just play a downward scale, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So it doubles up there, and actually it gets softer when it goes down. That's intentional. That's modeled after the original. Similar things happen up high. That's why we have a bunch of different drawbars, dB8 octave, dB7 octave, and dB9 octave, and then the dB1 minus octave is the one I just played you, so it's the drawbar 1. So to counter that, I added a sub-oscillator, or like a bass pedal, which is very powerful. I don't know why it got so soft all of a sudden. So something feels like it's not as loud as it's supposed to be. And those are the changes. But now I want to talk about, provided there is no questions, I want to talk about just the basic Combinator design process for getting an image in and getting a panel up. And what I've done is I've created a draw template. And I'll show you very quickly what the process is. The template is just simple crosshairs, and it looks like that. So this is a 2-spacer. You can just expand it if you want to have more, but this is basically a guide for the first round. And I'll explain what I mean, because after that you don't need this anymore. You'll just use the reference. This allows you to not have to worry about carefully cropping the image when you take it in and out. And it gives you the way to line things up precisely and add controls. And let's just do a quick little walkthrough of a dummy instrument here. Let's pick something that's an actual reason instrument and put it inside of a combinator. Now let's say I wanted to add a circle around one of these controls. So the first thing I would do is, I think I've already got it. In fact, I don't even need to wait. I can just go here and go to the Combinator 2 template. And load up this image. Okay, this is the full grid. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is the process of exporting. I got to go to the right place. Now it'll work from here. I'm going to export on top of that, and then I'm going to come back here and reload that. Somebody's rearranging the furniture. Can you see what's going on behind me? There's a dog loose. All right, so this little plus sign here in the middle of the combi is all we need. Then we have to choose either 100 or 200 zoom to make it easy. I use 200 because I like to be zoomed in when I'm working on the front panel. And I can just take any bit of this. I'm going to try to get all of it, but I don't have to be careful at all. That's it. That's all I need. I come in here, make a new layer, and paste it in. And then I have to do one thing. I have to transform it by 125%. There we go, 125, 125. Now it lines up, but it's not, I need to make it transparent and get the alignment, which will set me up for the rest of the, looks like it's vertically fine. Let's zoom in. All right, now we are spot on to the pixel. And what does that give us? Well, we can now see where if we were to put let's make a new layer and just put a circle around one of these knobs here and try to make it line up. Let's make it transparent for a second so we can see what we're doing. There, it's about right. Let's make that something bright so we can see it. So now we've got a circle around that knob. If we export without any of that other stuff on there, then we can import that in. I know this is tedious. And it will put the red circle around there and get rid of my other stuff. All right, so now if I wanted to, for example, do work on a smaller area, I want to do Control 4. So all I got to do is just give me a little bit of the bar up, the arrows on the patch browser up above. That small little bit of an image is enough. Make a new layer and paste that in. All I have to do is what I did before, transform that to the right size, and then line it up with this. And it will be perfectly lined up. There's one more little trick I like to do, and I'll show you here in a second. Oh, there it is. Okay, so now it's lined up. I mean, I didn't need to do that because I already had that knob there, but let's say I didn't have that going. So now I wanted to put another circle there, or put this circle there as well, but make it a different color. I don't have to grab the whole image is the point I'm trying to make. All I need is that little bit of that I'm working on. Then I can export that, save it on top of this one, come back here. You'll get used to this series, and now it lines up perfectly there. So, I mean, this is ugly, but that's the idea, is that once you get the initial image done, and we stay at either 200 and scale by 125% or 100 and scale by 250%, I believe. I hope I'm right. I think I'm right. Then you can go back and forth and have things line up, and you don't have to worry about like, trying to take a screen grab that's exactly the shape of the Combinator face panel. You just need one point of reference to line it up after that initial lineup. So I usually would also call this little thing that I did earlier the reference pick or similar. You can see I've got one up here already from practicing. I also made some grids here. Let's see, there we go. Something doesn't look right. There we go. I made two sets of grids, one that's centered and one that starts in the upper left-hand corner like rack extensions do. And you could export this as a starting point as well, and then line up all your knobs to this grid. Now, this grid is a 16 by 16 grid, and that is because when you move a knob, well, here, I'll show you. Let's take this one. This is the centered one. Oh boy, she's back. Again, I would rather hear that sound than the sound of something being crunched in her jaws that is not, that's going to be expensive. All right, so now with this grid, let's show you if we centered this on the grid. Yes, that's not going to get old. And you can zoom in a little too to nail it down. Looks like we're a little high, but somewhere between those two. So there isn't really a center position here that perfectly aligns, but we would do that. If we hold down Option and arrow left and right, we go exactly 16 pixels, which is 80 pixels in the graphics program, because everything's 5 times the pixels in the high resolution image. And if we do Shift, we'll do the little steps, the 4 in between. So this is 4 pixels, this Shift and arrows, up and down too. And then this is Option and arrows is 16 pixels. So the benefit is you can move something here a certain number of pixels and then have it, let's see where that was before, I don't know. I'll show you on the first one here. We can know how many pixels we're moving something. If we wanted to like move this over, let's go one step over. Then all we got to do is come back in here, turn on our little thingies, and let's see, it depends on how I've got my grid set up. Yes, that should be one. No? Oh, snap to grid needs to be on. There we go. Nope, still not. Oh, I'm sorry, that's 80. I haven't multiplied. It's crazy. I had it all figured out. Anyway, it's 1 over. The whole point being that now if I were to export this, it should line up with the one I just made. I mean the move that I made here, so that red thing will follow. Nope, it did not. It didn't move at all. Okay, I don't have something set up right. That's the idea though, is that it goes, hang on. Hey, Roxy. Hey. She's gonna have to go outside. 30 seconds, please. I failed at the example, but the concept is that once you get it set up right, you can notch something over 3 notches in Reason and then come over to the graphics program, notch it over 3 notches as well, and they will line right back up. However, I failed at that example, and I'm not sure why. Oh, I did it that far. Nope, I didn't even do it that far. All right, well, hey, it worked in rehearsal. How many times have you heard that? So that's the basic idea, though. Once you get the template set up with your alignment cross on there, bring that into Reason and then export it back into your graphics program and line it up with the original cross. Bam, bam, bam. Then you use this reference to line everything else up and move stuff around, and you don't have to shoot the whole screen every time you move one thing. You can move it and then come back and get it right where it was. Get it right where you want it to go. Okay, so now I've got to catch up with the chat. Oh, there is a chat. Yes, I'm showing off custom Combinator designs, but these basics would still apply. And you just wouldn't have the ability to change sizes and do stuff like that. You would still be able to use the 100% zoom version of it, which is to make a high resolution graphic. In fact, they don't support high resolution graphics, so you don't need, it's a 1-to-1 zoom, but you can't do high resolution designs, which only affects things that look more like the B3, which has the image that I used in this is the actual B3 organ. It's a picture of the B3 organ. This is the curve of the back of the unit that I used to get the data for this. And I actually found the data recently too. I found these are all the recordings I made. I put in sine wave, 440 sine wave tones so that I could measure the Doppler shift in the original Leslie speaker. And then I played all the tone wheels from bottom to top. I pulled out the first drawbar, played them from bottom to top. I think that's coming up here, you can hear. Oh, that's the example of the fold back. You can hear how the first 7 notes are softer and down an octave. And then it gets louder and starts going up. I'm just playing up the keyboard. It gets loud in the middle, and then it starts to get soft again. You don't really hear it on that one. And so that soft, loud, soft curve is accomplished with the filter on the sine wave, such that it's a low-pass filter, and it doesn't track the keyboard. So as the sine wave drawbar pitch goes up, as you play higher on the keyboard, it gets softer because the filter is essentially closing down as you play higher notes. So I was able to get that matched exactly, and that's the same filter that you have access to here. So let me play you this. Let me play you this. That's what I meant to say. You can hear the waveform changing. So that's a square wave there. Doesn't really sound right with the Leslie on it because you're not going to have that. And if that's not bright enough, you can open the filter up. Or darken it. And that will give you some more tonal control to go beyond just the regular B3 sound. And just hit reset that knob to the middle, and this one on. I don't know if you can hear. Just that little bit of tonal change. Now that all adds up when we start to put multiple drawbars together. Kind of thins the sound out a little bit too. So you've got that to play with. Also new, I forgot to play these as I was giving the tour. My left hand technique is not up to speed. And vibrato and chorus, I never really liked those on the original B3, and that's one of the reasons I left them off the original model, plus I ran out of buttons. But I decided here to add them, and there's also going to be a Leslie as well. Wait a minute, I have to find it. Everything looks so weird, zoomed, super hyper here. I'm usually sticking to about 120 zoom for most of my work. So let's go to the Leslie. And this is redundant because we've already got the built-in Leslie here, but this is the standalone Leslie. We've got all the same controls here. We just have a few more parameters for the reverb that we didn't have before. But I also added the vibrato chorus to the standalone Leslie, although that's impossible to recreate. It would never happen on the original B3 because you would have the vibrato coming from the tone bars. So if you ran, for example, guitar or voice through the Leslie, you wouldn't be able to hear that effect. But now you can, for what it's worth. And the reverbs defaults to spring, which is very common on the B3. It wasn't standard, but a lot of people added it. And you can also switch it to a plate. But of course, like anything, you can go in and change the reverb if you want to get in and tweak. Unlike, I mean, I'm not going to say it's better because it's a combinator, because it's not better. It would be better as a rack extension, I would imagine, but you wouldn't be able to go in and tweak all these things if it were. So there are advantages and disadvantages. And just like the B3, we have some hidden functions here. The top and bottom pulley are the only thing that actually was hidden on this, so it's kind of silly to have them. There's no reason to not run it like this with this open. And it just, if you don't want it, if you don't need those controls, and it's probably going to be quite a few people don't need those controls, then you just can leave it at the 3-space default. And so what I want to do with these, to anybody out there who is a B3 aficionado or somebody who has the original refill, which is what's 2009, I think. Well, it was 2009 when I was doing these recordings, August. So it probably wasn't till, looks like December or so when I actually got this thing released, or maybe 2010 when it actually came out. That seems like so long ago. So much has changed in this world. So we have the standalone, and this will be tested in the coming weeks on Reason Talk, and it's just feature suggestions are welcome. Of course, this is an open source basic concept, so anybody that wants to can modify it, but you can't sell it. That's all we ask. It's supposed to be, this is supposed to be free, but you can make donations by just purchasing the original from the Ed for TV site, and I'll provide the links in the thread on Reason Talk. If you feel guilty and want to contribute in some way, but that's not requirement at all. I also want to move on, if I've covered everything, and talk about CV, getting a little esoteric here. In fact, do I have? No, I don't have that already set up. I set it up before, and it was in response to a thread online talking about getting different delay times out of the echo other than the preset times that come with it. And what I did is I set up a little example to basically test that theory. What I'm using is a Selig gain as my CV source. And I'm going to connect it into the fader out into the delay time in. Then I'm going to turn this all the way down to 1% 100% on the input here so that we are really fine tuning it. And what I found was that a 100%, this is 100 plus 127 minus 127 in this, it moved it from 1 millisecond to 8 milliseconds. So that if I wanted 4 milliseconds, I'd set it halfway. Now, this is an imprecise science, but it just shows you that the knob on the front can be stepped or quantized, but the parameter that it's controlling could have higher resolution. And how I determined that was just by recording the audio so I could look at it. I used the rim sound here, the side stick, and I made it very short so I could see it very clearly. And then I made the balance 50-50 and the feedback 0. So it's hard to hear it different when it's this. But we will see it here. So hang on a second. Let's make an audio track and record it. Then we can see what's going on. This is still one of my favorite ways to investigate things in Reason. Let's see here. We'll just loop a short little area here. And I will zoom in on that. All right, so this is going to show that we're moving it later and we're moving it earlier. So if we compare, we need a reference though. We need to know what the difference between the original steps are. So this is 1 millisecond, and then we'll go to 8. And this is how I determine what I'm about to show you. Okay, so there's 1 on the left and 8 on the right. So if I were to set this back to 1 and push this all the way over, so I'm sending out 127 right now, then it should equal this. So what I want to do is I'll play that again, but I'm going to zoom in, and we want to see that this is from here, that's 3 seconds, and here it is 3 seconds and 8 milliseconds. Oh, there, see the 8 down here in the lower left-hand corner? Almost underneath the live stream logo. Okay, so now it should still be 8. Let's wait. There it goes. It's set to 1, but I've modulated it with the CV, 127 CV, only at 1% going in, gives me the next step. So this, halfway between the two, should give me 4. So let's confirm that. All right, so if the original is at 3 seconds, then this one is at 4 milliseconds. 3 seconds and 4 milliseconds. So indeed, and then this back here should be back to 1, which is almost impossible to see. Yeah, they run together. So then I thought, let's test that theory. Let's go up to 95 and see where it takes us. Okay. And down here we see 95 in our time position. And then the next setting, well, let me just, I won't do the spoiler. Let's put the CV offset. Okay, and now we are at 103, or maybe 102. And then we go up here to the next setting, 103 is the next setting. So what that means is that at this setting, this becomes a fine tune. Moving it all the way up is like moving up to the next step, and anywhere in between here and here is going to be in between. In fact, since I'm using only positive, I can go into VCA mode. Now this is 0, and this is 127 here, so this should be halfway. So this would give us what? It's easy to figure it out. Halfway between, was it 95 and 103 is 99, right? 4 in between, so this should be 99. Let's see where it goes. All right, right there, 99. So now, if we wanted to, we could make a combinator for the echo, and we could give it a main delay, this knob, and then a fine tune. The problem is, in the combinator, we wouldn't be able to see these values. We wouldn't know where the setting was, but you can calculate now, if I needed 100 milliseconds, it would probably be somewhere above. Let's see, if that was 4, then that should be right here. So that should be 99, 100, 101, 102, 103. So let's test that. Let's go 99, 100, 101. So right around here should be around 101. Let's find out. And this is where we go, and there our readout is 101. So we have a predictable way. We're actually able to get pretty fine resolution. I haven't tested it to see how far I have to move this before I get a change here, but I imagine that this is pretty smooth resolution, and we can get even sub-millisecond accuracy if we were, for example, trying to time this to something else and we were hearing 2 sounds and able to adjust the fine tune until they were perfectly in sync. So the other test I did was to make sure that, in fact, the, here, this will be a fun way to do it, that if we are modulating it with, like, say, a LFO, that's not just like modulating the knob, which would move us in steps. And what I discovered was a really fun sound. So let's now do some LFO modulation. In fact, let's start with a whole different setup. I want something with a pitch, and then we'll put this after and modulate this one. So you go here. And we can still use a small amount of modulation, and then we will use something like a quad note generator just to play some notes so we don't have to play anything. All right, now we want to get rid of that. And I don't know why that's in there. It doesn't need to be in there. You go down here. Okay, so now I want to hear. Not a good example. Let's get some. We can hear, though, that it's definitely smooth modulation. So despite the fact that the knob moves in steps, we can do this effect here. We can get smooth modulation in here. If we were to put this in a combinator, we could modulate the knob and maybe not have a smooth effect. But here's something I discovered that was pretty fun too. If we keep pitch and do some crazy modulations, you get some weird glitchy sounds. In fact, it might not be as interesting on this as it was on the drum pattern, so let's try this. It was really seemingly glitching out nicely on the drum pattern. I think we need a busier pattern for it to be more obvious. So without keep pitch, you can hear the pitches being modulated up and down. Here, we'll take off. So that's a nice effect. That's pitch modulation though. If we keep pitch, we get instead, there it is. That's what I was hearing before. Almost like a chaotic effect, which would probably sound pretty interesting on a drum pattern. Some of it sounds backwards. Cool. Anyway, I stumbled upon that and thought that was interesting and worth sharing. That's, yes, that's a fun glitching effect, accidental glitching effect. If I was using something other than a nice sine wave as a source, maybe a random wave here, I could probably take it even further. And I wasn't mixing any, but if I'm mixing with the original, you can keep some sort of rhythm underneath. I like that. I could actually start a whole piece on that. Huh. Well, you never know. Fun, fun, fun is always waiting for you around the corner if you just press one more button. In this case, it was the keep pitch button. All right, well, I have an anxious puppy, and I hear some sounds that I think I need to investigate. And so I'm going to stop 10 minutes early on my stream today and thank everyone for showing up, or everybody who's watching it after the fact. And as always, you can find me in Reason Talk, usually blabbing on about something or nothing in some cases. And so join me there for some more antics. Let's go out with this song. This is all, I forgot to credit the song. This is a patch I made on Hydrosynth and the Mini Brute for the synth bass. And I think one of my live streams will have to be at some point covering how I integrate the live room here, because I've got the full drum kit there, a guitar amp with a reamp, a bass station. Oh, and you can't see it, but I've pulled the V drums out and I'm making a stand-up kit for live performance with a looping concept that I haven't really tried yet, but I will probably do a live stream on that too, just for fun, because I would probably appreciate feedback, because it's something I haven't done before. Spent a lot of time with the V drums, but I'm always playing them like a drum kit. This is taking me back to my marching band time, and so I've been practicing my rudiments. That's something that my teacher would love to hear me say. At over 60 years old, I am still practicing my rudiments, and they're getting better. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll talk about that and more on the next live stream, whenever that is, wherever that is. And please tune in, because it will at least be interesting. Thanks, and see you next time.